Okay. So today I just want to talk a little bit about. Well, first I should probably explain the title. Let's see if I can. Okay. Conservative. So today I just want to talk a little bit about. Well, conservatism. Progressivism is. Conservatism is liberalism driving the speed limit. That's a quote from Michael Malice. And I think it accurately describes what the conservative movement is, particularly in this country, but in general, the idea of preserving whatever the status quo is, even if that status quo is steeped in non-conservative, progressive, and very bad ideas. And it's just a little less radical than the Jacobin than the Jacobin hard left progressive leaders or revolutionaries, but it's basically an ideology that's conceded all of the important points to the left. And I thought a great example of this, and this is one of the reasons I decided to make this particular video, a great example occurred the other day, this weekend, when I called into a podcast, a live stream of someone named Anthony Brian Logan. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this internet personality, but he's an African American conservative Trump supporter. He's very MAGA. Yeah, he even wears. In fact, I think every episode he wears the "Make America Great Again" hat, which I don't have a problem with. Actually, I like the MAGA hats, and even if you're not a Trump supporter, I think people should wear that just as a sign of defiance or rejection of this horrible, stultifying, brainwashed mentality that says, and this is basically what the left believes, that there's only one acceptable point of view and no deviation from that, no matter how benign, is warranted. But basically, he's a pro-Trump conservative or an anti-liberal conservative. So I thought I would get a pretty good reception when I called in towards the end of his most recent program and decided to talk about who the Motani, I'm probably mispronouncing that, but the Muslim woman who wants to come to the United States after being embedded with ISIS for, I think, the past 3 or 4 years. She was married to 2 shaheeds, 2 jihadists who bit the dust, and married a third, which she had a child with. Now, what should be done with the child? Of course, I mean, it's horrible, the notion that a child who didn't do anything wrong and didn't ask to be born into this this horrific environment be blamed for his parents' responsibility. I mean, I think she should be grateful that she's still alive, that she didn't face capital punishment at the hands of the Kurds, the Kurdish Peshmerga, who captured her, which is what she deserved. But the debate now is whether or not she should be allowed to come to the United States, even though she's not really an American by any normal definition. And I called in and started to talk about this and explain how this isn't about de-radicalizing, even if you believe that she was sincere, which I don't think there's any reason to trust her statements now. She's basically she wants to come back to the U.S. because her husbands were killed and ISIS has lost its stronghold. I think they've been evacuated from the last little cantonment they've held in Syria just this past week. But basically, you have people who don't want to become martyrs, who don't have the strength of their convictions in Islam and the Quran and the promise that they'll go to paradise made by Muhammad. They don't have the strength of their conviction, so they want to turn tail and return to the lavish life in the US or in the UK, where they can go on the dole and perhaps plan more terror attacks or return to another battlefield overseas. But the point is, regardless of whether or not she wants to do that, whether she wants to stay a jihadist or not, she doesn't belong anywhere in the U.S., just like these other people don't belong anywhere in the West. And the distinction between citizenship and nationality has really been completely eroded. But I wanted to make the point that this wasn't about de-radicalizing them, even assuming that she is sincere, which I don't. But even if you make that assumption, there's no such thing as de-radicalizing someone like this. You need to de-Islamicize them in the same way that other, and this has happened before, the son of the person who founded Hamas embraced Christianity and became and collaborated with the Israeli authorities during the Second Intifada. And he became a devout Christian and even wrote a book about that entitled Son of Hamas. Now, I mean, that's a genuine change when someone, when Christ transforms someone's heart. And this has happened to many Muslims. I just reviewed the book by the late Nabil Qureshi, a Christian apologist and friend of David Wood, who abandoned Ahmadiyya Islam. Now, he wasn't a radical. He belonged to one of the more benign sects of Islam, but he also had to make this journey into a completely different way of relating to God and approaching life. And that's what you have to do with jihadists. It's not about simply ensuring that they don't go out and murder everyone in a Paris bistro or a kosher supermarket. It's not simply about deprogramming someone the way you would grab someone who's been on heroin and stick them in an apartment until they detox. You need to change how they look at God and change the fact that they have to realize that the book that they've based their life upon, the Quran, is a complete and utter lie written by a false prophet. And this is all a very long-winded way of getting to my main point, which is that this guy, this so-called counterculture MAGA supporter, just blanched completely at entertaining this notion, even though most of the people who were listening to the call in the stream approved of it and recognized the wisdom of de-Islamicizing people, of taking the Islam out of them, because the Islam is the problem. It's not that by some alchemic process, some amorphous, undiagnosable process, they watched a video of an Al-Qaeda beheading or ISIS setting a Jordanian pilot on fire and immolating him on camera. It's not that they watched that or listened to a fiery speech by an imam and suddenly they're jihadists. They're jihadists because jihad is one of the core doctrines of Islam. And until you smash the underpinning, the ideological and philosophical underpinnings of Islam and expose them to the truth, you're going to have this problem. It doesn't matter how many stupid Quilliam ex-extremist foundations you have, or any of these other people peddling scam kind of patent medicine type solutions, quote unquote. It doesn't matter how many of these things you have if you don't extract the Islam from them. It's not going to work, because how are you going to say attacking and killing infidels is wrong when it clearly sanctions that in the Quran? You're going to have to rewrite the Quran, and that is blasphemous if you're Muslim, because you're rewriting Allah's word. So there's no way to get around it. You need to take the Islam out. And this host, Anthony Brian Logan, completely freaked out. He ushered me off very quickly and tried to make all of these equivocations to the Crusades and all of these. You've heard all of these ridiculous sophomoric comparisons between Christianity and Islam, and there is no comparison. But this is all just a long way of getting to my main point, which is that it just demonstrates why conservatism is not looked upon fondly, and why you have all of these alternative ideologies cropping up. There's a great book by George Hawley, Right-Wing Critics of American Conservatism, which explains some of the shortcomings of conservatism. It's written by a liberal professor, but he has some very incisive and worthwhile observations. And I think my exchange with Mr. Logan, Anthony Brian Logan, is just encapsulates this problem in a nutshell. And we're going to really need to deal with this before going out and making a headlong charge against progressivism, because it's just going to wind up like it's going to wind up like any other battle where the people are ill equipped and ill prepared, and you're going to wind up losing the battle, and in the long run the war, if you don't come to grips with the idea that conservatism as it's fashioned now is just it's not working, because it's sort of become a form of Stockholm syndrome. And the exchange about Islam that I just described is a little nutshell of that.